There are a lot of moments that stick out to me in cinema, but when it comes to the hero's journey, only one comes to mind. The pit scene from The Dark Knight Rises is arguably one of the most potent pieces of storytelling that Christopher Nolan has produced. But setting aside all the backstory, Ra's al Ghul's teachings, his father's philosophy, and the first 3/4 of this movie, let's talk about what really makes this scene by itself memorable. Today we're going to talk about how The Dark Knight Rises uses music, rhythm, and camera distance to build momentum. Hans Zimmer really pulled out all the stops in this score, and though it might seem stereotypical of its genre, it has more to offer than meets the ear. The track played during this scene is Why Do We Fall, in the key of F major or D minor, and it makes the most of the entire scale. Like a heartbeat, we start with a steady thumping drum, backed by ghostly strings, to outline the core chord progression throughout the song. Woodwinds join us in a sweeping crescendo as Bruce gears up for the journey. Drums roll as he approaches the wall and refuses the rope, bringing out darting violins, making the most of that march-like 4/4 and bolstering the woodwind crescendo with brass. The music mirrors the scene not only in intensity, but also in melody. By this point in the scene, we've climbed far enough up the scale as we rise that if we were on piano, our right hand would finally be on the treble clef. Furthermore, you might notice that we sped up significantly, from 80 to 115 beats per minute. At the height of the music, 35th measure, just as Bruce jumps, we get a double rest. It's only about a second and a half, but it feels like an eternity. He lands it, and then cheer, and our music settles to 105 BPM. He is releasing the tension of the climb, but still keeping us on the move. Bruce is focused now as we enter the film's final sequence. In keeping with the theme of music, let's focus on rhythm. The cutting here is relatively simple if you just look at the average shot lengths between the beginning and middle of the scene. During the conversation, we see a lengthy 8.6 second average. These two characters are emotionally grounded in this scene. We see their faces, eyes, and by extension, thoughts. It's personal, and the long takes let us feel the situation, especially in Bruce, who holds a 14-second take during his monologue of fears.
I do fear death. I fear dying in here, while my city burns. There's no one there to save it.
By the end, we're of course cutting rapidly, save for the build-up to the jump, which slows down to about 6 seconds before we get 3 half-second cuts to his various supporters on the ground mid-jump. This push and pull of the shot lengths illustrate a fundamental style in Nolan's pacing. We see expansion and contraction at each critical point in the narrative to focus our attention on each moment. The sequence ends with a 7-second pan out to release the tension, but not enough to take the wind out of the following sequence. And finally, building on that pan, let's talk about camera distance. This can be a reasonably innocuous element, but it takes center stage here. The visual language is simple. The further from the camera Bruce gets, the closer to his goal. Again, expanding and contracting. We see this especially in the opening scene. We have a relatively wide angle, close to our actors between our two speakers rather than over the shoulder, a bit like the Coen brothers. This scene is personal, delicate even, and the camera shows that with a steady push on both characters. In the next shot, we get a little further away but a tighter focal length as we track with Bruce into the handheld, and then begins his ascent. For the better part, we view his climb from the ground, POV with the other prisoners steadily expanding. He is getting further from us, closer to the sky. Even at the ledge, we see him from a distance, but with a much longer focal length for the more expressive shots, like of him taking a breath before the leap. We end on that final continuous shot of him finally running into the distance and leaving us far behind. This expansion and contraction of all three elements is what establishes such a strong momentum to the piece and what sets it apart in film, even for such a short sequence.
You do not fear death. You think this makes you strong. It makes you weak.
Why?
How can you move faster than possible, fight longer than possible, without the most powerful impulse of the spirit? The fear of death.
I do fear death. I fear dying in here, while my city burns. There's no one there to save it.
Then make the climb. As the child is. Without the rope. Then fear will find you again.
Ah, supplies for your journey. Oh, that's wonderful.
What does that mean?
Rise.
Building your online business.